General Motors didn't go to Washington because it made bad cars. That's the part people get wrong. GM went to Washington because one morning the math stopped working. Not next year. Not eventually. Right now. Payroll, suppliers, pensions, factories. But all of it was about to collapse at the same time. And if GM fell, it wouldn't fall alone. It would take entire cities with it. Here's why you should stay with this story. Because the GM bailout wasn't just about saving a car company. It was about stopping a chain reaction that could have turned the 2008 crisis into something far worse. And near the end, there's a single moment inside GM where executives realized they weren't fighting competitors anymore. They were fighting the clock. To understand why GM needed help, you have to understand what GM actually was. Not a company. A system. For most of the 20th century, General Motors was America's industrial backbone. Factories across Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. Hundreds of thousands of workers. Millions of retirees. Entire towns built around one logo. In places like Flint, Michigan, GM wasn't just an employer. It was life. Kids grew up expecting to work there. Houses were bought because of it. Local businesses survived because of it. GM wasn't lean. It was massive. And for decades, that mass felt like strength. By the 1990s, GM was still one of the largest companies in the world. Multiple brands. Chevy, Buick, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Cadillac, GMC, Saturn, Hummer, Saab. Too many brands, honestly. But when sales were strong, nobody questioned it. The problem was hidden. And like most hidden problems, it grew quietly. GM made money selling cars. But it also carried enormous obligations. Healthcare for retirees, pensions promised decades earlier, costs locked in when America looked very different. Every car GM sold carried the weight of the past. Japanese competitors didn't have that. They were younger, leaner, more flexible. By the early 2000s, cracks were visible. Quality perception lagged. Sedans were losing ground. But trucks and SUVs saved the day. Big margins, big profits. For a while, that covered everything. Then gas prices spiked. Then consumer preferences shifted. Then credit tightened. And then 2008 arrived like a wrecking ball. The housing market collapsed. Banks froze lending. People stopped buying cars. Not slowed down. Stopped. Auto sales fell off a cliff. Dealerships emptied. Factories had nothing to build. GM's cash burn became terrifying. Billions disappearing every month. Executives ran projections. How long could they last? The answer kept shrinking. Now, here's where the fear becomes real. GM didn't just need to sell cars to survive. They needed credit. Short-term loans to pay suppliers. Lines of credit to keep plants open. When the financial system froze, that lifeline vanished. Even healthy companies panicked. GM was not healthy. By late 2008, GM was staring at bankruptcy, not a controlled restructuring, a collapse. If GM filed normally, suppliers wouldn't get paid. Those suppliers also worked with Ford and Chrysler. If they went under, they'd take everyone with them. This is the part people forget. The auto industry is a web. If one major player snaps, the whole thing shakes. So GM faced an impossible situation. They needed time. Time to restructure. Time to cut brands. Time to renegotiate obligations. But bankruptcy without support would have destroyed trust instantly. Customers wouldn't buy cars from a dead company. Dealers would flee. Suppliers would panic. The spiral would accelerate. This wasn't about saving executives. It was about preventing economic free fall, and that's when GM went to Washington. Not confidently, desperately. Executives flew in on corporate jets. That didn't help public perception. Congress grilled them. Taxpayers were furious. Why should regular people save a company that mismanaged itself? It was a fair question. But the answer wasn't emotional, it was practical. Let GM fail instantly and the damage spreads. Millions of jobs, manufacturing base, regional economies. This wasn't theory, this was math. So the government stepped in. The bailout wasn't a gift. It was a restructuring with strings. GM would shrink. Brands would die, executives would go. The company would be remade. This is where the problem becomes personal. Pontiac was killed. Saturn disappeared. Hummer sold. Factories closed. Towns lost their anchor. Workers lost jobs. This wasn't painless. It was brutal. But it was necessary. GM emerged from bankruptcy smaller, cleaner, and more focused. Chevy, Cadillac, GMC, Buick. Fewer plates to spin. But here's the uncomfortable truth. GM didn't just need money. They needed permission to reset. The bailout gave them cover. Cover to do things they should have done years earlier. Cut losses. Simplify. Modernize. Without government backing, those moves would have caused chaos. With it, they had a chance. Still, the stigma remained. People joked about government motors. Trust was damaged. But slowly, GM stabilized. Products improved. Quality scores climbed. The company paid back much of the bailout money. But the lesson stuck. Size without flexibility is dangerous. History without adaptation is heavy. GM wasn't evil. It was old. And old systems break under new pressures. Here's the moment that changes how you see the bailout. GM didn't need saving because Americans stopped buying cars. They needed saving because the entire financial system collapsed at once. Credit, confidence, consumption, all gone. Any company with GM's obligations would have cracked. The bailout wasn't about rewarding failure. It was about preventing collapse during a once-in-a-century crisis. And here's the climax. The real reason GM needed a bailout wasn't bad cars, bad people, or bad intentions. It was time. GM ran out of it. Decades of decisions caught up all at once. And when time disappears, even giants kneel. Today, GM still exists. Lean down. Changed. Still struggling with the future? Electric vehicles, software, new competition. The bailout didn't make GM invincible. It gave them another chance. Whether they use it fully is still being written. That's the real story. Not heroes or villains. Just a system pushed past its limits. If you want to understand how close America came to losing its entire auto industry in one domino collapse, watch the next video on your screen. Subscribe for more deep automotive and business history stories. And comment below whether you think the bailout saved America or just delayed the inevitable.